I got arrested for doing graffiti. No, you didn't actually. Sorry, I got detained for doing graffiti. And let me tell you about it. Hey people of the internet, my name is Ghoul, and today I'm going to be telling you the story on how I was detained for doing graffiti. The story takes place when I was a freshman in high school. I would say I was about 14, maybe 15 at the time. During this weird and awkward phase of my life, I was super into graffiti art, pretty much drawing it all the time. I blame my hyperfixation Jet Set Radio. In all seriousness though, that game did inspire and kick off my art journey, which is a video for another day. At this point in my graffiti journey, I was also inspired by YouTube. I watched tons of videos of other graffiti artists doing it, so I thought, hey, might as well start doing it for real instead of just drawing it on paper. Yeah, real smart decision, am I right? The tale begins on one nice Friday afternoon in April. My buddy Jake asked me if I wanted to hang out at his place and spend the night. I said sure, and later that day at 3:10, me, my buddy Jake, and another friend of ours, who we'll just call Derek, left school on our skateboards and headed to his place. Now, I won't be focusing too much on this day because it wasn't until the next day that I really got in trouble. However, I will give a few moments that I do remember from that day. Went back to Jake's to drop our bags off. I kept a small bag that was full of my collection of paint markers on me though. Went and skated to our local recreation center that's in our small town just to kind of mess around. Friends of mine smoked a little weed in an outdoor bathroom. I didn't because I was too much of a pussy. And I remember that I did tag a few signs with some paint markers later in the evening when we were heading back to Jake's place. Now, before you ask, my friends knew I was into graffiti and they thought it was actually pretty dope, so they didn't really care that I did it. They kind of just let me do my own thing. When we eventually got back to Jake's place later that evening, we all went to bed early because we wanted a morning skate, which basically means that we wanted to wake up early, catch the sunrise, and skate. So the next morning we wake up, have breakfast, I grab my bag full of paint markers, and we headed out for the day. It was raining. Okay, it wasn't exactly raining, but it was a light drizzle, so we said screw it and just rolled with it. This part will be important. I don't know what dumbass mindset I had that morning though, but I was tagging everything I could. Pretty much any sign that I came across, the sewage hole in the side of the road, and eventually after skating for an hour or two in this drizzling rain, we get to this spot where there was this big public mailbox slightly shrouded in these trees. Kinda looked like this. So thinking that I was this cool guy who was so cool for drawing on public property, I decided to tag it with this fat tipped orange paint marker that I got. But honestly, I kinda overdid it. I wrote my tag like 3 separate times and drew a little character. Here's an accurate representation of what it looked like. It took me a few minutes, but as I get done tagging this mailbox, I turn around and notice that there's some bald old head watching me. At first, I was confused on why he just stood there and watched me. Then I realized, oh shit, he just saw me tag this. He darted off shortly after, and I saw this dude get in his car and drive off. I immediately started getting a bad feeling. I told my friends we had to go, so we left the spot we were at and went onto one of the main roads to go to the gas station for some drinks. My friends didn't think anything of the old head who saw me tagging the mailbox, but dude, I was so freaking paranoid. So we're about halfway up this long main road to the gas station. I'm literally tweaking about the guy who saw me still. My friends are just telling me that I'm worrying for nothing and everything is fine. However, when we actually look up and notice which cars were coming our way, we saw a police car heading in our direction. Now, when I said I had a bad feeling earlier, it was just a little pit in my stomach. When this happened, it was a fucking crater. And before we knew it, the cop car pulled up and then stopped right next to us. He got out of his car and told us to stop. He then asked what we were doing. So we told him that we were just skating and heading up to the gas station. He then said he had a report of 3 teens doing graffiti on a mailbox. At this point, I knew I was fucking cooked. Apparently, an anonymous source told the officer that they saw 3 teenagers doing graffiti on a mailbox. Now, I actually kind of got a little annoyed when I heard this because it was literally just me doing it, but since my friends were there at the time, which, by the way, they were just skating in the road while I was tagging the mailbox, the, again, anonymous source added them to the crime. I'm still salty about it to this day, man. Also, remember how I said the rain was kind of important? Yeah, about that. Jake had a blue custom skateboard at the time, and I guess whoever made it didn't use any clear coat when it was finished, so when the board got wet or when it rained, the paint from the board would get on my friend's hands. The officer noticed that my friend's hands were blue and thought it was spray paint, so Jake, Derek, and I all had to explain to him that the blue was just paint coming off his skateboard. So, at this point, the officer didn't believe us and was convinced that all 3 of us did it. He wanted to take me me and my friends down to the police station. But I wasn't just gonna let my friends go down for something that I did. Honestly, I fessed up and told them that it was me, just me. Yeah, I know, lame. You thought it was gonna be a lot more cool, didn't you? After telling the officer that I was the only one who was doing the graffiti, he asked me what I did it with, and I told him it was just paint markers. He told me to take off my backpack and open it so he could see what was inside. When he looked in, he saw all of the paint markers. He then asked if I knew my Miranda rights. I kind of just shrugged my shoulders, but I don't know, I guess he didn't really acknowledge it? I don't know, this happened years ago, so I don't 100% remember it. However, I do remember telling my friends that I would catch them later and that I would be good. I won't lie, I was just trying to act cool in front of my friends. I was panicking inside. I got into the back of the cop car, and we drove off back towards the scene of the crime. Also, notice how I didn't say he put me in handcuffs? Yeah, that's why I said I got detained, not arrested. However, I'm definitely making the title say arrested. Can you really blame me for wanting to sound like I did something cool? While I was in the back of the cop car, I started overthinking pretty hard. This was my very first criminal offense I've ever done, so I honestly didn't know what to expect or what was gonna happen. Was it gonna stick to my permanent record? Was I gonna have to go to court, pay a fine, go to jail? I had no clue what was gonna happen. I was just really worried about my future at that point. Once we arrived back at the public mailbox, the officer got out of his vehicle to snap a few pictures of it. While the cop left me in the car, I pulled out my phone to text my dad. Yeah, the officer didn't really take any of my belongings for some reason. I don't know, man. This guy really wasn't doing his job right. I pulled out my shitty Android phone and texted my dad something like, hey, don't be mad at me, but I'm gonna need you to come get me from the police station. I texted him because I knew he would have been way less pissed off than my mom would have been. This is where the part of the story kind of doles out, so I'll try to wrap it up here. After the officer took pictures of the vandalism, we went back to the police station and I was put into a room with a desk and a chair. I sat there for a little bit and waited. Then, officers came in and questioned me for a bit, asking why I did it in the first place. Now, come on. Do you really think I'm gonna say something like, yeah, I played Jet Set Radio, and expect them not to either be confused or bust out laughing? In all seriousness though, I don't even know what I said to them. So when I thought of the idea of texting my dad about this, I thought he'd be the one to come and get me. Yeah, no. My mom came and got me instead, and dude, she was livid. I thought she was going to rip my head off. Again, a lot of this part is hazy, but I do recall getting yelled at in the car for at least half an hour. It was rough. So you're probably wondering what happened then. Did I get a charge? Actually, I didn't. Basically, since it was my first offense ever, they just told me and my mom that if I was able to wash off all the graffiti, that there would be no charges pressed against me. So I had to take the next few hours of that day scrubbing off all the places I tagged. Kind of ironic how my tag was scrub at the time and I was having to scrub it all off. You also might be wondering, what did my friends do? Well, it turns out they actually did go to the gas station and grab drinks first, but they did head straight back home to tell Jake's mom about it. If I remember correctly, Jake's mom actually did drive down to the police station to make sure I was good. At this point, I just felt bad. I'm not trying to make this story a PSA not to do graffiti, but I genuinely just felt bad after I realized how idiotic I was being. I'm not saying doing graffiti is a bad thing, trust me. To this day, I still think it is a very dope art form, and hell, I even implicate it in my own art still. But I was just straight up being an idiot at the time. I went home after the whole incident and spent the next 2 weeks grounded. After that weekend, I went back to school, and I don't know if it was Jake who had spilt the beans or not, but so many people knew I somehow got arrested. And they just kept asking me what happened. I'm not joking when I say this, but the questions didn't stop until the end of the school year. Anyways, that's all the time I have for today. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like on this video, and honestly, you should subscribe too, because this is just the tip of the iceberg of stuff I've done throughout my life. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Much love all, have yourself a great day, and peace.